I'll be at your back. I'll be at your back. Push your legs.
When the police forced open the shutters in Oldham that morning, they didn't expect a garage. They expected engine parts, grease, and tools. Instead, they found an empire laid bare. Beneath the flickering strip lights were skeletons of wrapped Range Rovers, BMWs, and Porsche shells, every core piece a shattered promise. But the seed had been planted years before. For years earlier, the network began with what seemed like a harmless valet service, a facade to lull trust, trick of the eye. What started as customer parking became one of Britain's most audacious criminal enterprises. Before we go deeper, imagine handing your car keys to someone who isn't who they seem. That's all it took. Don't pass this by and forget, hit subscribe now, or you might only remember when it's too late. Greater Manchester's outskirts, Oldham, Chadderton, and Radcliffe, are places once defined by mills, industry, and communities built around work. But as factories closed and jobs disappeared, empty warehouses and shuttered units became more than relics. They became hiding places for a different kind of enterprise. Over time, chop shops, garages dismantling stolen vehicles for parts, shifted from fringe operations to full-scale organized crime. The vehicles weren't random. Luxury models, desirable parts, all to satisfy demand abroad. Evidence collected by Greater Manchester Police repeatedly shows broken shells, number plates removed, and engine parts tagged and shipped overseas. At the center of this case stood Asif Hussain, registered proprietor of German Automotive 365 Limited. On paper, a small business trading in car parts. But investigations revealed that Hussain's operations were integral to a criminal network damaging both victims and communities. In one documented case, nearly 100 luxury cars worth over £3 million were stolen, stripped, and exported, with Hussain convicted as the ringleader. Meanwhile, as the COVID-19 pandemic arrived, the UK government introduced the Bounce Back Loan Scheme in May 2020. Designed to help small businesses survive, it offered loans up to £50,000 backed 100% by the government, often with minimal checks. But this speed and light oversight opened the door to abuse. Government reports found that £1.8 billion of the nearly £46.5 billion lent under the scheme had been flagged by lenders as suspected fraud. In some sectors, fraud and error were estimated at nearly 10%, with micro-businesses particularly vulnerable. For people like Hussain, this meant access to public money under the guise of legitimacy to rent units, buy equipment, and cover logistics. While the scheme's aim was relief, for this network it became fuel. By early 2020, as global travel slowly returned, a new breed of valet service began appearing around Manchester Airport. Websites advertised meet and greet, secure compound, and CCTV monitored parking rates far below official airport options. Once you booked, everything seemed legitimate: confirmation emails, uniformed drivers, and branded paperwork. But the promise of convenience was a disguise. Some of these companies used names almost identical to genuine airport services, advertising through aggregator sites to appear credible. Travelers believed they were handing their cars to authorized staff. In reality, many were giving them directly to organized criminals. Vehicles were driven from the airport straight to industrial yards in Oldham, Chadderton, and Radcliffe, areas already dotted with units registered to automotive traders. Reports soon began to surface. Cars left in the secure compounds were damaged, missing, or had hundreds of unexplained miles added. One Jaguar owner tracked his vehicle moving through Manchester while he was abroad. Another returned to find his BMW stripped of parts. Police later linked several of these missing vehicles to the same network involved in large-scale car dismantling and export. At first, the pattern wasn't clear. Individual thefts were logged separately, often treated as administrative errors or disputes between private firms and customers. But as complaints multiplied, investigators noticed the same phone numbers, directors, and payment accounts behind supposedly different valet companies. Each time a name was flagged, it vanished, only to reappear under another registration. Within weeks, dozens of luxury vehicles had disappeared. Range Rovers, Audis, BMWs, and Porsches, all booked through the same web of fake parking sites. By the time some owners returned from holiday, their £80,000 cars were already in pieces. What began as a low-risk online service had become the first visible layer of a wider criminal operation. It was simple, profitable, and hard to trace, a test run for something far more organized waiting just beyond the airport perimeter. Most people watching this will think, that could never happen to me. They thought the same. If you're smart enough to double-check your keys, be smart enough to hit subscribe, and if you're not, comment below why you're gambling with luck. As 2020 turned into 2021, what had begun as scattered thefts and missing valet cars was coalescing into a systematic export network. Vehicles weren't simply stolen, they were being dismantled, packaged, and shipped overseas. At the center of this network was Asif Hussain, the calculated mastermind who coordinated everything from vehicle sourcing to export schedules. Hadir Ali, a trusted lieutenant, managed the mills, overseeing workers, timing operations, and ensuring stripped cars disappeared before dawn. Sajid Jangharia, skilled in logistics, handled the physical movement of vehicles, arranging drivers and routes and avoiding detection on motorways. Tayyab Hasnain, responsible for logistics and property sourcing, secured warehouses, negotiated short-term rentals, and maintained a rotating network of storage units. Bibra Shofi, the network's quiet financier, laundered proceeds through shell companies, bounced pandemic loan funds, and balanced illicit profits with fake invoices. They used false names, fake rental agreements, and multiple business registrations to stay ahead of scrutiny. Industrial units in Stockfield Mill, Chadderton, and various workshops across Radcliffe became production sites. In these units, nothing was left to chance. Shells stacked against walls, engines labeled and wrapped, dashboards removed. Automatic number plate recognition cameras began flagging vehicles reported missing from airport valet services. Some registration plates showed up repeatedly on side roads near the industrial estates. These small signals, once dismissed, now formed a map. Authorities eventually established financial links. Fraudulent bounce-back loans, awarded during the pandemic, were routed through companies with no legitimate trade. These funds, in part, paid for rents at multiple units, equipment, and overseas freight costs. Government audits later showed millions in pandemic relief schemes had been misused in similar criminal operations across the UK. The operation's scale: dozens of high-end vehicles stolen, parts shipped to Turkey, the UAE, and West Africa. Over time, multiple containers were intercepted abroad, some were recovered intact. The evidence mounted: shipping labels, export paperwork, and forensic traces. And yet, even with this evidence gathering, the network believed itself safe. Safe behind fake audits, signed leases under false names, and phone numbers that burned quickly. In 2021, the operation reached its apex. Nearly 90 luxury vehicles had been stolen, dismantled with military precision, and prepared for export. These were not random thefts, they were surgical strikes on desirable automobiles. Finances were secretly fortified. Fraudulently obtained bounce-back loans were diverted into the operation, funding premises, shipping, tools, and vehicles. Investigations by government bodies, including CPS and audits, later uncovered multiple convictions for misuse of loan schemes during this period. In 2021, the net finally began to close. ANPR cameras, quietly scanning roadways day and night, started flagging registration plates tied to vehicles reported missing from Manchester Airport valet bookings. Investigators traced those plates to roads around Oldham and Radcliffe, and surveillance teams were dispatched. For weeks they watched in silence, cars arriving under cover of darkness, slipping between shuttered industrial units. Drivers changed, engines cooled, shells moved. These were the signals they had been waiting for. Coordinated intelligence units compiled logs, matched times, and documented suspicious handoffs. Then, in the pre-dawn hours, the raids commenced. Tactical teams fanned out across multiple sites simultaneously. Stockfield Mill in Chadderton, units in Radcliffe, and other garages registered under false aliases. Doors were forced, and shutters ripped open. Inside, officers confronted the operation in full, stripped out Range Rovers, wrapped engine blocks, dashboards removed, and crates labeled for export. Hidden among workshop paraphernalia were stacks of freight documents, customs declarations, and export labels. Some crates bore faint marks of final destinations: UAE, Turkey, and West Africa. In the chaos, phones and laptops were seized, and within their encrypted shells lay the blueprints of the network. Messages referenced vehicles by color, model, or lot codes. Red 2020R, or KN Black, appeared in the same threads that discussed container numbers. Other threads revealed trading in shell companies, burner phones, and temporary leases. The arrests followed swiftly. Asif Hussain was detained in Oldham. Hadir Ali was located at one of the mill units. Sajid Jangharia, Tayyab Hasnain, and Bibra Shofi were apprehended in coordinated operations across Greater Manchester. Some were arrested as they tried to escape in vans, others were waiting inside offices with documents strewn around. Forensic teams bagged every piece of electronics and every scrap of shipping paperwork and loaded vehicles as evidence. In court, the scale of the betrayal was laid bare. Prosecutors painted a picture not of opportunistic theft, but of a system built on government loans, cloned identities, export deception, and silent cooperation among clandestine operatives. The phrase echoed in the judgment: the loans weren't a side scheme. They were the backbone. In early 2022, the day arrived when justice would face those who thought they operated beyond consequence. The long investigation led to Manchester Crown Court, where the first network's undoing would be laid bare. Asif Hussain, the mastermind and architect of the operation, sat at the center. The court heard that he had orchestrated theft, export logistics, and money laundering. He received 15 years for conspiracy to steal, conspiracy to handle stolen goods, and money laundering. Hadir Ali, who managed the mills, the night shifts, and the hands-on dismantling operations, was sentenced to 11 years for his role in handling stolen goods. Sajid Jangharia, the man who coordinated the movement of vehicles across Greater Manchester, got 10 years for conspiracy to steal and handling stolen goods. Tayyab Hasnain, responsible for sourcing and logistics, was handed 5 years and 6 months for his part in the scheme. Bibra Shofi, the financial conduit, moving loans, funneling funds, masking profits, was sentenced to 5 years after admitting multiple counts, including fraud and handling stolen goods. The sentencing judge described the operation as industrial in scale, a criminal enterprise built not on chance but on planning, finance, and international supply chains. The public outcry was immediate. Taxpayer money had been abused, government relief loans meant to support struggling businesses were repurposed to bankroll crime. Media outlets dug into how such a gang had accessed £145,000 from COVID bounce-back loans through shell firms with no true business activity. Abroad, the impact reverberated. Vehicles stolen under this scheme were traced to Ghana, as Ghanaian authorities recovered dozens of luxury cars believed to have been illegally imported. Pakistan, too, surfaced in investigations. One Range Rover stolen in the UK was traced via tracking to Karachi. The case also triggered action under Interpol's Safe Wheels initiative, targeting stolen vehicle trafficking across West Africa and linking UK seizures with foreign enforcement. Locked cells held many of the conspirators, but the machinery they built could not be fully suppressed by walls. Stories like this vanish fast, but the crimes don't stop. If you leave now without subscribing, remember this moment when the next big case drops and everyone's talking about it but you. Don't be the one catching up in the comments. The arrests in 2022 were meant to close the book. But in Manchester's underworld, every ending only writes the next chapter. By late 2023, a quiet resurrection was underway. In the same back streets where the first network fell, another began to stir. They called themselves the Yard 50, a deliberate echo of the empire that once ruled the region's stolen car trade. Only this time, they learned from every mistake their predecessors made. Where Hussain's crew had operated in open industrial units, the new group moved in silence, private garages, rented warehouses, and gated lots masked as import-export businesses. They didn't flash cash or drive stolen cars themselves. They worked like ghosts, using encrypted apps and rotating phone numbers, operating beneath the noise of the city. At the center stood Asif Matadar, the quiet organizer and strategist. To outsiders, he appeared as a simple auto mechanic, polite, composed, and always in branded overalls. But behind that image was a man who understood logistics like a shipping broker. He handled schedules, falsified invoices, and built an operation that could move cars faster than some legitimate freight companies. Then there was Shawaz Rehman, known locally as Shaz. Once a part-time panel beater, he had turned his Oldham workshop into a fully equipped chop shop. Rehman was meticulous, every panel tagged, every VIN filed off, every part reboxed within hours. Detectives later called him the production line. Imran Taj was the movement man, the invisible driver behind countless overnight transfers. With routes mapped across motorways and secondary roads, he coordinated recovery vans, false plates, and convoy timing with near-military precision. He never appeared in CCTV near the crimes, but his network of drivers did. Zishan Ali, a mechanical genius from Chadderton, specialized in stripping high-end vehicles without leaving traceable tool marks. He was the kind of technician even dealerships respected, until police found luxury car parts in his garage worth hundreds of thousands. Mohammed Irfan handled VIN cloning and vehicle disguise. He could alter a Range Rover's identity in under 2 hours, reprogramming ECUs and coding replacement keys using high-end diagnostic tools bought under fake business names. Adam Elwood was the risk-taker, the one who tested routes, transported goods across county lines, and managed the dirtier side of business. Known for dangerous driving stunts on social media, he later admitted to moving stolen cars for extra cash. Greater Manchester Police launched Operation Avis in early 2024, after intelligence linked a spike in stolen vehicles to the same shipping routes once used by Hussein's gang. Detectives deployed drones, ANPR systems, and tracking beacons, watching as stolen vehicles disappeared into the same mills, repainted, stripped, and packed for export under falsified declarations like used car parts. Surveillance showed shipments labeled to companies in Turkey, the UAE, and West Africa. Customs checks revealed engines, chassis, and dashboards with partial VINs matching cars reported missing from across England. The scale mirrored the previous network almost exactly. Investigators traced financial transactions through shell firms registered under the same directors, proving that new companies were simply recycled entities from Hussein's old empire. The connection was undeniable. A new generation had inherited a criminal blueprint polished to perfection. On a cold April morning in 2024, officers moved in simultaneously on 8 sites across Oldham, Rochdale, and Radcliffe. What they found was hauntingly familiar: stripped-down Mercedes GLEs, Range Rovers missing doors, and BMW dashboards stacked like puzzle pieces. The warehouses looked less like garages and more like industrial factories. One officer described the scene as a car graveyard reborn, clean, efficient, and terrifyingly organized. Inside one laptop, detectives discovered detailed shipping manifests, passwords for freight tracking systems, and spreadsheets logging cars by make, model, and destination. Every operation was time-stamped. The same precision that once built the first empire now guided its sequel. In June 2024, the case reached Manchester Crown Court. The judge said the network was well-practiced, sophisticated, and born from the ashes of a previous criminal empire. The sentences followed. Asif Matadar, the coordinator, was sentenced to 3 years and 6 months for conspiracy to steal. Shawaz Rehman received 4 years and 9 months, Imran Taj 4 years, and Zishan Ali 3 years and 9 months. Adam Elwood was hit hardest among them, with 6 years for handling stolen goods and drug-related offences. Mohammed Irfan was given 3 years. Collectively, the gang was sentenced to over 25 years in prison. But the case didn't end with the sentencing. Police recovered over 90 dismantled vehicles, yet hundreds more remained missing. Some were later discovered overseas, seized in Ghana, Dubai, and Karachi, bearing fake import certificates that mirrored those from 2021. From airport forecourts to foreign ports, it was a network built on deception, precision, and greed. What began as a small-time valet scam grew into one of Britain's most organized theft empires, exporting stolen luxury cars halfway across the world under the disguise of legitimate trade. It wasn't luck. It was the method: forged documents, cloned VINs, and freight containers that slipped through the system unseen. For years, this underworld moved in plain sight, powered by fake companies, real money, and the illusion of respectability. Even after arrests, convictions, and years behind bars, the legacy lived on. Every unit that closed gave birth to another, smarter, faster, quieter. The same roads, the same docks, the same buyers overseas. It's a machine that never truly stops, only shifts gears. And the truth is uncomfortable. If stolen cars can vanish across continents, how many more networks are still out there, waiting to restart? The next one might already be running, a new front, a new name, a new face smiling as they hand you a receipt and drive away with your trust. So before you hand over your keys at any airport, double check who's taking them. Because one careless moment can fuel an empire. And if you never want to miss stories like this again, hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. Because the next case might already be unfolding right now, and you'll want to be here when it does.